onto this computer. Okay, welcome, Tony.
Hi, Jessica. Hey, everyone. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. Thank you for joining us today. Would you like to start by telling us a little bit about you, Tony?
Sure. So my name is Tony Bodoh, and I live in Nashville. And I guess the best thing that you probably want to know is why I'm here. And so I am an expert in human experience. I spend most of my days actually studying customer experience and employee experience. And so Jessica and I have been talking for several months now, I guess. And one of the things that I brought to her attention, I said, this is a perfect time for people to understand emotional resilience. And I teach emotional resilience to soldiers in the military. Recently taught a class workshop for the Vanderbilt doctors back in February. And I kind of travel around the country and do some of this. Obviously, a lot of it now is done virtually. But emotional resilience is one of these topics that I think is something that every one of us really needs to learn and be aware of. And the benefits that it can provide for us and how to actually practice it. So that's the quick version of what I do. I spend a lot of time working with companies, helping them help their customers. And in the process, oftentimes end up coaching and training their employees so that their employees can be at the top of their game, peak performance, emotional resilience, those types of things.
Wonderful. Thank you, Tony. Can you tell us a little bit more about what emotional resilience training is?
Yeah, so emotional resilience, I'll start there and then I'll kind of dive into the training. Emotional resilience is really this ability that we have as human beings to either tolerate unpleasant emotions for an extended period of time or to bounce back when we do have an unpleasant experience. And I use unpleasant rather than negative because I think when we talk about negative emotions, and I sometimes slip and use that language too, but when we talk about negative emotions, it's something that we are inclined to fear. We're inclined to try to avoid. And the reality is that our emotions, they fire first. They fire about a half second before your logical brain kick in. So what happens for a lot of us is the emotions fire when we're something around us or we feel something within us come up. And if we're uncertain or it feels unpleasant to us, we can look for why we feel that way. And our logical brain kicks in to say, let me find evidence of why I feel that way. And then we start looking around and may start blaming the person next to us or blaming the conditions of our environment and that. And that's just the way our bodies are designed to work because our brain is designed to protect us. I mean, if you think back, at some point we may have been in a cave or on the open plains of the savannah and trying to avoid wild beasts that were sneaking up and we were their prey, right? So we are tuned in and emotionally react very quickly and our body goes into fight, flight, or freeze. And so with emotional resilience, you can actually train your body to react differently, to tolerate unpleasant emotions longer, so you actually allow your logical brain to kick in. And so as an example, the training that there's a lot of different types of training. One version of the training is actually to build tolerance. And what that would look like is recognizing that every wave of emotion will only last for 90 seconds. And so if you can allow yourself just to feel that unpleasant emotion or even a pleasant emotion, if you can allow yourself to feel that emotion and just stay present to it for up to 90 seconds, that wave will pass. And what will happen as a result of that is if you are able to hold that state, you actually have a cellular change because your cells are receiving, basically chemicals are plugging into your cells throughout your body. That's what makes you feel emotion. And if you can hold that state and just allow the emotion to be there, your cells become able to actually receive more of that chemical, which makes you feel unpleasant or makes you feel pleasant. And so you can tolerate it more. Think of it like tolerating alcohol or tobacco or any other drug. They work very much the same way. So our emotions are just chemicals in our body that create this experience for us. And so if we can hold our state for a period of time, up to 90 seconds, we can actually build a tolerance level to it, so that when those unpleasant emotions come up again in the future, we don't feel like we have to go into fight, flight, or freeze. We can actually stand there in the present and be present to what's going on around us and appreciate it. And then when that wave passes, go take action. So that's one of the real benefits of being able to do the training. Now, the types of training that are out there, um, there are a number of different things that we can do. One of the types of training that I do, we actually use what's called beast triggers, and it was developed by a gentleman, actually two gentlemen, one from Australia, and he loves animals, and so he starts out with like the crocodile, and every animal has a name, and it gives you the keys to what you want to do to help you through a particular emotional state. So as an example, RESPA is the crocodile, RESPA. And we use the crocodile to help us think about adapting. And I think this is a perfect time for us to think about adapting as the world is so rapidly. We're not able to go to the yoga studio to practice at home if we're going to do it, right? Our kids aren't going to school. If they're in school, they're doing it from home. I'm working from home. I'm not traveling anymore, so we've got to adapt pretty rapidly here. And the crocodile is interesting. So we teach them the principles of crocodile. As an example, a crocodile actually can lower its heart rate to about 3 beats per minute. So it can lay under the water and not have to worry about going up for oxygen because it's not burning through all of its oxygen. And they can actually go without eating for months at a time. And so these crocodiles when the conditions are not optimal, they just kind of quiet down, and they get really quiet and just kind of wait it all out. And so it's an interesting, and it's not out of fear. They're adapting to the conditions and the circumstances at the moment, finding a way to move through it. The other thing that crocodiles can do is that they have a double eyelid, which means the first eyelid closes and they can actually see through it. It's transparent. And the second eyelid is more like our eyelid, where it actually closes off the light and they can't see. When they go under the water that's murky and dirty and all of that, they can open that first eyelid, the one that they can't see through, and they can actually see into the water, and it gives them the ability to navigate very effectively and to see their prey and to avoid being prey for something else. And so the crocodiles can see through the murkiness. And I liken that to, if you think about how we have the ability to see with our eyes, but we also have our vision, if you will. We can see conditions around us and we could react to those conditions, or we can allow our vision to penetrate the murkiness of the conditions we're in. And that allows us to see the truth, to see what we want to see. And so that's one of the reasons we use the crocodile as an example. So those are just a couple examples. And it's great when you can teach kids these principles using animals, because kids love animals. I know you have Theodore there. And so the dog for us is Grati, Grati. And of course it means gratitude. And so if you think about a dog, dogs are so amazing that no matter what you do, they're always grateful to see you. They're always wagging their tail and coming up. It doesn't matter if you left for hours and then come back, they're just there greeting you at the door, wagging their tails, happy to see you. And so Grati is the dog, and we think of, wow, that's gratitude. So every time we see the dog, let's be grateful. What's something we can be grateful for? So there's just a couple examples that we use in one version of our training. But essentially it comes down to getting yourself to pause, feel that emotion, be present with it, and then make a decision to act in a way that's beneficial for you or for those around you.
Thank you, Tony. I love how so much of this is like the yoga philosophy that I know a lot of you are already used to hearing, and just kind of like a different, more modern way. And I love that.
Well, yeah, a lot of this actually comes out of that whole background of the Eastern way of thinking and the Eastern philosophies, and that, which I love that too, because in this country, a lot of times people are resistant to that. But if we bring it to them in a different format, then they're like, oh yeah, crocodiles, I love crocodiles, or dogs, I love dogs, and it kind of opens them up to being, and you kind of sneak it in there a little bit on the side. With the military, we've even done this with the military. And so it's funny to watch these special operators, the Navy SEALs, the Army Rangers. You get them in a room and you start talking about animals, and they all just kind of soften, and they start to think about, ooh, what beast could I be, right? And then but it helps them actually cope with it. They've been able to help with PTSD. It's been able to help. We were at Fort Drum a few years ago, and there's just one that stands out. And we were working with the medical teams that help all the amputees that come back from Iraq and Afghanistan. So this goes back about 2 or 3 years ago. And it was a really, really challenging job for them, because they know these soldiers went over there and they came back and they're entirely different now. They're 1 or 2 limbs missing and they've got to adapt to life now. And so even for them, it was a trying time. And I think about, frontline first responders or the people in the medical field right now as an example. They're kind of going through the same, constantly a stressful environment. And they need to be aware of these types of things, emotional resilience, and really be practicing them as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you wouldn't have so much road rage if people have emotional resilience, right?
Exactly.
So I'm just going to kind of speak for myself, and I'm assuming other people are feeling the same way. So right now, like the main goal in yoga is to be present and to feel what you're feeling. And so at this time where like we're all kind of like living in this place where we're hoping this is going to end soon, and we're like, okay, as soon as this ends, we're going to go back to normal life. It's going to be all good, And so we're not present and we're not feeling it because we're just like hoping. But, of course, like if they extend and extend, then we continue to be crushed and, living for like that moment, right? So especially like right now, do you have any suggestions on how to be present and how to like find almost acceptance for this state that we are forced to live in?
Yeah, I think it's a really important question you're asking, Jessica, and I think we need to really consider it, and then be that light for others so they can go down the path too. Um, there's a couple things that I've really been thinking about a lot. I've been both writing about these and doing Facebook Lives and that, just to help other people. Number one is, I think the sooner we come to an acceptance that the way things were it's not going to be that way ever again. Now, that doesn't mean it's going to be radically different. It's going to be somewhat different. And I'll give you a couple examples. The fact that you now have this podcast, right? And that the fact that you are now online offering yoga services and teaching and all of that, that didn't exist before. Maybe you had it in your mind, or maybe you may have gone down that path, but this was a catalyst to really create transformation. I liken this in some sense to a combination of 9/11 and at the same time 2008, the financial crisis. And I say that because 9/11 was like an instantaneous event that everything shut down for a period of time, and then it eventually came back. But in 2008, it was like this ongoing event that took months and months, really about a year and a half to unfold. And then there was the recovery process. And so if we look at those two things, this was both practically an instant event as far as shutting businesses down. We kind of knew that it might happen, but it was relatively quick and we couldn't adjust fast enough to that. And then it's going to drag on for a period of time. So because we have these experiences, it's going to change us. And so a lot of times we might say, well, I don't want to change. I want to go back to the normal. And as you said, that's actually living in the past and hoping for the future at the same time and missing this present moment. And so I think one of the best things to do is just really pause for, just a few minutes. You can set a timer on your clock as an example. I use my phone a lot to do this. Just go for 5 minutes or 3 minutes and focus on gratitude. What in this moment am I truly grateful for? And there's kind of a two-way street here. And when we first start practicing gratitude, I think, as we're younger, it's usually like, oh, someone gave me a gift, thank you so much. We're taught to react to the conditions around us or something that just happened to us. But there's a different way to approach this. And it's something that I love teaching people, is that we actually memorize our emotions. And if you think about it, I can have you think about, let's just do this as a quick practice here. Go back in your mind to a time when you were really grateful. Something happened or someone was in your life at that moment and you felt really grateful. I'm just going to take a deep breath and just bring yourself back. If you want to close your eyes, that'll help you. That's fine. But just bring yourself back to the moment and start listening to what's going on around you. Remember what was being talked about, if there were other people there or other sounds you might have heard if you are in nature, if that was the case. And start to remember what you were seeing at the time. Maybe who was there or what was around you. And start to think about what you smelled. Was there a particular smell that you recall? And as you kind of bring yourself into the presence of this moment in the past, and you bring it present in this moment now, go deep within and start to think about and examine where in your body do you feel gratitude. Now that you've got that location, what shape does it feel like? Is it like a sphere, a triangle, a cube? Something kind of an odd shape, kind of get an image of what that shape is like. What does it feel like from a shape? Is it smooth or is it rough? Is it warm, hot, cool? What color is it? Does it feel like it has a vibration or a sound to it? Now that you've focused on that, imagine it's expanding. All of those sensations are expanding and filling your entire body. And feel it just fill up your entire body with gratitude. And now feel it like extend beyond your body about 3 or 4 feet to the people around you or to nature around you. And just feel it filling the space around you. Now expand it even further and it goes out like 10 feet. Feel it just fill that space up 10 feet around you, in front of you and back of you, to your sides, above you and below you. And now expand it out even further. And expand it out all the way across the state of Tennessee or wherever you're at. And just feel it continue to expand for you. See it going up into the sky, down into the earth, and all around you. Take a deep breath and just feel how much gratitude there is in this moment. Okay, now take another breath and slowly bring yourself back into the room you're in right now. Bring yourself back to the present moment. And you can open your eyes. Now, what we did there was back to a past memory of gratitude. And so just like you memorize stuff in school, facts and figures and the names of the people around you and all of that, you can memorize emotions. And one of the most powerful things to do is to be able to memorize a positive or a pleasant emotion and find ways to bring it up within you. Now, why I went through that exercise, I had you kind of memorize the shape, the size, the color. I had you memorize how it felt and the sound and all of that. The reason for all of that is that how your brain actually builds new connections or strengthens those old connections, the pathways in your brain. And every memory is basically a series of networks in your brain, or a series of connections in your brain. But when you focus on it, and when you repeat it, and when you feel the intensity of the emotion, those all help build it's called a myelin sheathing. And it's like wrapping a bunch of tape around this connection so it stays secure for a long time. And so by doing that, now you can say, I just want to feel grateful. You don't have to go look for a reason to feel grateful. You can just say, I just want to feel grateful. And you bring up that gratitude at any moment you want to. And you just allow yourself to feel that state. And there doesn't have to be a reason why other than I just want to feel good. And I think for a lot of people, it's a novel experience that they've never realized that they can just choose to feel an emotion, a pleasant emotion, without having to have a reason why. And so that's part of this whole idea of emotional resilience too, is that you begin to treat your emotions as a real thing, not just something that happens to me, but it's something that I can actually control and influence and do with what I want, and really have this richness of an experience of life. So that was kind of a long answer to your question.
No, that was lovely. Thank you so much for leading us through that. Um, I'm just wondering if you have any more tips or tricks, especially during Corona time, for all of us to practice.
Yeah, so I would say there's a tip I would give you for the morning, and there's a tip I give you for the evening. The morning tip would be to decide what your intention for the day is. Now, intentions and goals, we talk about those a lot of times interchangeably. Intentions for me are different than goals. A goal is a destination, something you want to accomplish, or something you want to achieve, or somewhere you want to go. Whereas an intention, and so that's a kind of a future state, right? You recognize there's a gap between where I am and where I want to be. But intention is about the present moment. Who am I being in this moment? Who am I being today? And so there's a very difference between what am I doing and where am I going, which is goal oriented, versus who am I being in this moment. And I think one of the most important things for us to do is to come up with 3 intentions for the day. So as an example, they can be things like, I am having fun today. I am being grateful today. I'm learning something new today. I'm going to be present today. I mean, you can just think about it. It doesn't just have to be about good feelings. It could be, I'm going to be a light to someone else today, right? It just, you think about who you want to be and hold that state. And then as you go throughout the day, you just kind of check in. Am I being this person? And trust me, all of us fall off the wagon, right? I mean, I can start my day with the idea of I'm having fun today, and something goes wrong and I start, right? You just kind of, but I remind myself, oh wait, that's not having fun. And so it's kind of like, instead of judging myself, I go back to it. My intention is to have fun today. I got to say, okay, let me go do something that's fun. If this isn't a fun activity, let me just kind of break away for a few minutes and go do something that's fun to bring myself back to that state. When I get back, I'm suddenly more creative. I solve my problem, because I'm being in that state of fun. If you've got kids, this can be a challenging time, or if your spouse is home and they're not usually home, right? If you're all locked in the house together, it's one of the intentions that I set most days is that I'm going to be present to them, and I have to kind of time box that, right? But I'm going to be present to them for like 15 minutes or 30 minutes. And sometimes what that looks like is I take my girls out for a drive, and we have what I call the mobile quarantine. And we get in our car and we roll up the windows and we just drive around just so we can see things outside of our neighborhood. We can get outside of the house and all of that. And just to make it a little bit more fun, I think it was last week, I pulled up, I don't know if you guys remember the Beatles song Yellow Submarine. And so we were singing that, except we replaced Yellow Submarine with Mobile Quarantine. And we were singing that as we we're driving down the road, and it was a lot of fun. It was just kind of, it's the silly little things, but it was like I was present with them. We were having some fun together, and it took everyone's mind off what was happening. So that's a good tip for the beginning of the day. What is your intention? Come back to that throughout the day. Now, at the end of the day, before you go to sleep at night, I would create a list of at least 3 things that you see as successes for yourself. Write the success out and write why it was meaningful to you. Now, in where we are today, that could simply be, I didn't blow up at my kids today, right? It could be something like that. It could be, I got out of bed and put on real clothes today, and I'm kind of being a little, facetious about this to some extent, but in a sense, those can be significant successes. Or you could say, hey, maybe the success was I stayed in pajamas all day and I really just took good self-care time for myself, right? And so whatever that success is, whyever it's meaningful to you, write down at least 3 of those at the end of the day. The reason for this is that, let's say we're in this quarantine for a month or 2 months or whatever it's going to be, right? It's the beginning of April, at least I think in Tennessee here, probably for another 4 weeks or so. If that's the case, by the end of the month, if you do 3 successes a day, you'll have 90 successes. That's a lot. If you look at this list and you begin to have a rough day, just open up your success list and look at all these successes you've had in the past week or in the past month. And I've taught this to kids, it's like high school kids and that, because they're always taught, don't brag about yourself and things like that. And so when they start to learn that they should actually keep their own successes and why they're meaningful, that's the important part, why it's meaningful to you. They start to realize, wow, if I do this for a month, I have almost 100. And if I do this for a year, I'll have over 1,000 successes. And then their mind starts opening up to like, wow, that's impressive. I did all of these things. And they begin to see themselves differently. They begin to see themselves as a person who can learn, who can grow. And so it gets them out of this mindset of like, I'm stuck. I can't move ahead. I'm not good enough. And it really helps their self-confidence, self-esteem. We do the same thing, like I was saying earlier, with soldiers or with business executives. We have them go through the same exercise, and they find it. Every one of us struggles, no matter what level we're at. We're all struggling at some point, because if we're at growth, we've never done that before. It's something new. And so every day, I think we should look for some way that we had success in our life. Something small, something insignificant maybe to everyone else, or something big that really is like a game changer for us. So I would say those are two things I would really focus on: your intention in the morning, your successes at night. And I think that will change people's perspective if they go through their days that way.
Yeah, that's lovely. Thank you. So we just wanted to ask, we do want to open this up for questions soon, but
Mm-hmm.
before that, what resources would you recommend for somebody wanting to like learn more about this? And I'm also curious how you got into this.
Okay, so for resources, a couple of the books that I like, actually, I was trying to see if I have any of them up here behind me, but I think they're all in my library downstairs. Dr. Martin Seligman, he is a great resource. And here's what I'll recommend. I would go watch TED videos first. If you guys are familiar with TED, it's just TED.com. Or you can even Google these usually on YouTube, they've got them as well. But Dr. Martin Seligman is the founder of positive psychology. And this is where I take a lot of the stuff I work on from. And he talks about what it takes to thrive. So he's got some good videos out there. Another one I really like is Shawn Achor, Achor. And he's also got a very, very popular TED video. And he talks about happiness and success. And there's some really good tips in there. While it does talk about happiness and success, there's some really good tips about life in there. So that's a good one. And then Carol Dweck, Dweck. She was the researcher that uncovered this idea of the fixed mindset versus the growth mindset. And basically the fixed mindset is where you don't believe you can learn and grow. Growth mindset is like, well, if I put in the effort and try, I can probably learn something new. And it seems very basic, but it's truly amazing when they went into schools, how just subtle changes in how they talk to the kids would cause them over a month or 2 months to bump up their reading level by 2 grades, or their ability to do math by 1 or 2 years. And it all comes down to what they believe about themselves. Do I have the ability to learn something new, or don't I have that ability? And then they also take it into business and show how people do there. So I would say those 3. I know there's definitely some great videos on the TED.com or in YouTube with those individuals. I would start there. If it appeals to you, each of them have at least 1 or 2 books that you could go deeper into it from there. And if you have questions, you can reach out to me, and I need something on this topic. I probably got a resource I can pull up for you.
Great, thank you. So how did you get into positive psychology, Tony?
Actually goes back to 2007. I have a history bachelor's degree and with economics as a minor. And so I avoided all the psychology classes I could, because I thought psychology was useless back in my undergraduate program. And then in 2001, to go back, you remember, I moved to Nashville in 2001. I started my MBA program actually at University of Tennessee at Knoxville there. And And I avoided everything I could as far as psychology was concerned, because I was like, I'm a hard numbers guy. I'm an analyst by profession, and I just cared about statistics and all that kind of stuff. And fast forward to 2007, I was working with Gaylord Hotels at the time. I was at the headquarters office managing all analytics, and my vice president came in and said, we just let go of the entire market and customer satisfaction team because you're handling all the other analytics. We're now giving it to you. And I'm sitting here in my office like, I've never written a survey. I've avoided every possible psychology class. I have no idea what I'm doing. And so literally I just started to Google, what is customer service? What is customer satisfaction? And began to start reading. Around that same time, I think it was about a month later, I was at a conference in Miami, I think it was. And, I couldn't sleep. I was in the hotel industry, but I just don't sleep well in a hotel. So 2 a.m. flipping through the channels, and I see this program that Jack Canfield had, and it was teaching 8 of his 64 success principles. His really big book had just come out maybe a few months before that. And so I was watching this and intrigued by it because I had never heard anything like this before. And so I picked up his book, and I went from cover to cover in that book in probably about 3 or 4 weeks, and start practicing some of the principles he teaches. And I began to see these things changing in my life, which I was like, this is weird, just like, how does me feeling this way and behaving this way cause this to happen over here? Like I had some friends that were looking for different jobs and moving out. And so I realized that I could make a phone call for them and help them get a new job, but I wasn't doing the same thing for myself because I didn't believe in myself. And I was like, well, that's interesting. And the moment I realized that, and I started thinking about my own job, I hadn't even actually reached out to anyone yet. I had phone calls coming to me with people offering me jobs. I was like, this isn't right. This doesn't just happen. How does this work? And anyway, so progress along from there. I eventually, about a year later, hired a coach. And she's very big in the space. Mary Morrissey is her name. I'm not sure if any of you know her, but I hired her, and she was like my one-on-one personal coach, and started from that point. And just, I would say, for the next 7 or 8 years, was coached at a very high level, very intensely. And in that time also began studying psychology and everything else. And so the irony of it all is, a couple of years ago, I was named one of the top people to follow in customer service. And it's because the way I look at everything, I look at the human emotion. I look at from almost this human potential perspective of psychology, as opposed to making a profit, which I know all the numbers and all that, how to do it. Well, I found ways to link those together. And so I then, in that process, I end up getting a certification. I'm a certified life coach, which I don't usually tell people in business because they get all like kind of weird about it. But I'm a certified life coach. And then I went a little bit further, and I'm also a certified mental performance coach and emotional resilience coach. And now partnered with the founder of that company. The company's called Extreme Focus. The founder is Dave Austin. And that's where we do the Beast Triggers training together. We've actually created some programs now together around Beast Triggers. And so it's been a really interesting process of learning, primarily because I would say the trigger event was my vice president back in 2007, when I was working at Gaylord, saying, "You're now in charge of customer satisfaction." I had to figure it out. And so I jumped in and just started learning all of this stuff. And I've got 2 girls who are 16 and 14 now. And so they were really, really young at the time, like maybe 3 and 5 years old. I started this whole journey, or 2 and 4 years when I started this journey. And so they don't know any differently. And it's beautiful to watch them, like every kid, they have their challenges, right? But to watch them be able to navigate these challenges and not get stuck like a lot of other kids do. It's rewarding to see that. And just because it's not necessarily because I've taught them principle A, principle B, principle C, but they just see how to live, and it just becomes natural for them to live that way.
That's beautiful. Thank you, Tony. This has been wonderful, and I want to open it up. So I'm going to unmute everybody, and I want to open it up for questions for Tony from the group.
I don't have a question just yet because I feel like I'm still processing everything, but I did want to say that when I was a kid, my dad and I would drive around in our like 1989 Toyota van, and we would sing to the tune of Yellow Submarine, like "We all live in a great Toyota van." So that really
Nice.
made me happy.
That's awesome.
Does anyone else have any questions for Tony?
I guess I do kind of, so I don't know how to phrase it. Just gonna try to get this out there. So you're talking a lot about like um, kind of getting yourself back into like positive emotions.
Mhm.
But you were mentioning, sorry, I have my turn this. You mentioned like to be able to have emotional resilience in like the uncomfortable emotions, how you should like sit with them.
Mhm.
Um, so like where do you kind of like where do you, so let's say I'm sitting with my negative emotion and I'm making it to 90 seconds or something, and
Mhm.
then I'm just like not really coming out of it, and it's like just festering, or
Yeah.
so then do I just keep going, or do I then try to shift into like a state of gratitude?
So that's a really good question. And here's kind of the way I would look at it. And the first step is to really to just to recognize that emotions come in waves. And so grief is one emotion as an example where it can come in waves and waves and waves and waves. And I mentioned grief specifically because for a lot of people, I don't know your specific situation, but for a lot of people right now, they're actually experiencing a form of grief.
Right.
um, they may have lost their job, or they may have lost, they may be looking forward and kind of like, I'm going to lose my home, or I'm going to lose this, or I'm going to lose that. There is a deep sense of grief for a lot of people, even though no one out there is talking about that. That's one of the emotions that's going on right now. And so as we look at these waves of emotion that come through, one of the challenges, you don't really want to like push the unpleasant emotion aside and try to replace it with a pleasant emotion, because the more you do that, you'll actually just suppress the unpleasant emotion, and it has to express itself somehow. And typically when it expresses itself, if you push it down, and try to hide it or get away from it, it will come up either as something where you express it and you get angry at someone, you blow up at someone else, which is, that can happen, especially in the environment we're in right now. We're all in close quarters. It can show up as other types of unpleasant emotions. So what could be anger or grief or something like that today could turn into depression. The other element, the other part to it is, it can also cause your immune response system to decline, which is why a lot of people get sick, because you shut down their unpleasant emotions, and it weakens their immune system. And so instead of like trying to say, oh, I got to think something positive, see, now you're judging yourself and starting to feel guilty that you're feeling something unpleasant, or that it's taking too long to overcome it. So it's really just trying to be present with you, with yourself. So the thing to do is, as you move into this 90 seconds, you might examine yourself and say, is this really happening right now? Or is it something I'm thinking about from the past, or
Mhm.
something I'm imagining might happen in the future? And if you can kind of check in with it, and again, you're not judging the emotion itself, you're just kind of checking in and saying, is it because I'm focusing on the past or focusing on the future? And if you can do that, then you say, oh, okay, well, let me just focus on this present moment right now, and just allow yourself to feel that. And the wave will usually start to subside there when you begin to recognize that it's something from the past or something from the future. And if it doesn't, you can go through that process a little deeper and say, well, it's kind of exploring like, okay, so even if that did happen, do I have the way I would say it mostly is, do I have the resource? And by resource, like, do I have family members that would help me out? Do I have friends that would help me out? Do I have a savings account that would help me out? I don't know what the particular challenge is, but whatever it is, you start to ask yourself questions about like, but if that did happen, what could I do? Or how could I be supported? And you want to look to your social network and things like that. Like, who do I know that could help me, or what could help me? And just going through that process, if you're getting wave after wave, that's where you'd really want to start looking at what are the ways that I could handle this if it did happen. And that often calms down, because the fear, if it's fear that's coming up, the fear is really not so much about the event itself that you're imagining. Fear is often it's the fear of feeling unpleasant emotions if something were to happen. So in other words, if this happens, I would be embarrassed. And it's the fear of feeling the unpleasantness of embarrassment, not of the event itself. And as we start to untangle this a little bit, we can begin to say, well, oh, it's just embarrassment. If it were really to be embarrassed, it's just embarrassment. It's not like the end of my life, right? But your body is programmed. It doesn't know the difference between a saber-toothed tiger at the edge of the cave and a little bit of embarrassment. Your body reacts very much the same way. And so it's really about using your mind to bring back and let your reason kind of take control, if you will. But you don't want to shove down those emotions. You want to face them. You want to face that darkness, that unpleasantness. And it might be good, actually, if you do have someone, a loved one, or a friend, that if these waves keep coming back, that you reach out to them and say, I would like to talk through this with you. I don't want you just to help me shove it down. I just want to kind of, how could I handle this if it did happen? Does that help?
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you, Melissa. Does anyone else have a question for Tony? No?
What was the program that you said was I don't know if it's a program that you use or that you teach with the life coaching and the mental performance coach, and like, what did you do? What was that again?
Okay. Which one? So let me answer it this way. So the company that I got the mental performance coaching with is Extreme Focus. Okay. And the particular one of the programs that I created with Dave Austin, who's the founder of that company, is called Beast Triggers for Business.
Okay.
And if you Google that, or if you can find it there. And actually in that program, just to kind of give you what that program is, we go through there's 15 different beasts that we use. So the Respa, the crocodile, is one of them. Grady, the dog, is one of them. There's another 13, but we teach the animals in depth, and then we teach the principles associated. And then what we also do is we tie that into business. So if you are in business, it's a great program to use. Anyone can really use it at any level in the organization. If you want something that's more like, well, I'm not in business, so I don't care about that aspect, you can still, we have a lot of videos and things like that. But if you have a specific question, just reach out to me and I can give you some guidance there as well.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Yep.
Thanks, Emily. Okay, well, if there's no other questions, thank you so much, Tony. This was wonderful to have you on, and I appreciate all the tips you've given us. So
absolutely glad to be here to help out.
Okay, well, I hope we will all be more resilient after this.
Excellent.
Thank you, Tony.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.